So in this video, we're going to learn how to do pagination using Bootstrap and Angular. And so this is going to be our end product here. And you can see that our data shifts as we go through the pages. All right. Okay, and then so I just have a few sample files in this application. I'll just show you really quick. I have a user model here. Really simple, just first, last, username. And then I just have a route to one to create the users and then one to get all the users, right? And I did that just to show you some sample data. And then this is what my database looks like. I just have a few users just so I could have something to pull that I could show you. Okay, and then so the only additional thing that you'll need to install is AngularUI Bootstrap, and this is basically Bootstrap components written in Angular, all right? So it's really easy to use, and all you do is just go to this site right here or just Google Angular Bootstrap, and then you can either download the code or you can just, I think there's a way to install it using npm. But anyway, go ahead and install that, and then make sure you inject it into your application. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and so if you have a configuration file, you can inject it into that. However you have your application structured, but I'm just going to insert it into my controller. Okay, and then once you do that, make sure you go to your index and then you import that that new file from your library. Okay, and what you can do is actually, if you want to use this CDN right here, instead of having to download it, you can use this and just have it automatically set up and save you a lot of time. So if you want to go ahead and copy that, go right ahead. And then once you're done with that, make sure you've injected into your controller, go back to your application and hit refresh. Just make sure you're not getting any errors. All right. And so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert some sample data here. So what I'm going to do is Bootstrap, some more Bootstrap. If you want to check this out, you can go to panels, and I'm just going to grab one of these panels. So you can either copy from the site, or if you want to just copy mine, this is what I'm using. Okay, and this is what it's going to look like. All right, so we're just going to insert our data here. All right, and then the other thing that we're going to do is go back to the UI Bootstrap website and just kind of hit Control F and search for pagination. And this is the one that you want. You can pick whichever whichever one you want to use. I'm going to use the default. Okay, and they have some examples here, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this first one here, and then I'm going to paste that right below the table. What you can do is just hit refresh, and then you'll see right there. Now we don't have the page numbers because we haven't created that yet. So see right here, this ng model that says current page, that's what controls the page numbers. So back in our controller, right, we're going to go ahead and create that. So we'll say scope.currentPage, and we'll say 1 for right now. And don't forget to pass scope inside of your controller function. Okay, and then before I go any further, what I want to do is grab the data from my database and inject it into this table. So the way you do that, I'm just going to create a quick call. It'd be HTTP get, and actually let me run into my server and make sure, okay, it is /users. So, oops, where was I? /users. Okay, then I'll name it scope user data, or maybe, yeah, user data is fine. Okay, then I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to replace this. I'm going to say ng repeat. I'm going to say, oops, users in user data. users dot first. Users.last. And users.username. Okay, and so in case you're wondering what all these are right down here, back at the Angular Bootstrap website, it tells you everything that is supported in the pagination settings, right? So for example, total items right here represent the total number of items in all pages, right? So in other words, the total every single user that I have here. So the way to measure that would be users.length, right? That'll tell you how many are in this array of objects, right? And then same thing with the ng model. It'll tell you right here that's the current page. So of course you want to start that off on 1 like we did. We're not going to use this ng change right here. And so the other one that we're going to add is this items per page, right? And that's going to be the maximum number of items per page, right? Exactly what we want. And then we can set that to whatever we want. So we'll say page size, and then we'll set that in the controller, right? We'll say scope.page size equals 3. So for right now, basically what I'm saying is, hey, this is the total items that we have. I want to limit it to 3 per page. And then I'm going to set what the current page is, right? So let's see what this looks like. Let's go back to the application, hit refresh, and you'll see all the items here, and then we have our current page, which we set to 1, right? Now, it's displaying all of them because we haven't actually added a filter yet. So what we can do up here is we can add this filter, and we'll say limit to 3, right? And actually, we don't even need to set 3. We can type in page size because that's what we set to 3 here, page size, right? So you'll notice if you hit refresh now, we're limiting it to 3, okay? But we still don't have any functionality in our buttons, right? So now what we have to do is add a filter. Okay, and the way you do that is you can create a separate file if you need to, but I'm just going to do it right here in the controller. And I'll say .filter, and I'm going to name it Pagination, right? And so whatever you name the filter, that's what you apply right here in the ng repeat, right? So this is what it'll look like. All right, and then here we specify what it is that we want to do with a filter, okay? Now, before we do that, I want to show you something in JavaScript called slice, right? And so I'm going to create a quick array. I'll say my array equals David, Anthony, Costa, Brian, other name. Okay. So we have 6 items here in the array. So let me show you what you can do with this, right? So if you type in myArray.slice, it's going to ask you for 2 parameters, right? And they will be numbers. So like that, right? And so what the first one represents is where the slicing starts, right? So David is the 0 element, or the 0 index, and then Anthony is 1 and Acosta is 2, right? So in specifying that 2, it's going to cut off here on that second index, and then 3 represents where the index ends, or where the slicing ends, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. This is where it ends. However, it doesn't include the end, right? So for example, if it's 3, then so 0, 1, 2, 3, then Acosta is the last that's included, not the actual third one, right? So see if I can make this a little bit easier to explain. So let's say I make this 5, right? Well, we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the output is not going to include name. It's only going to include other, all right? But let's say I make this 1, right? 0, 1. Anthony will be included, right? So in short, the start one is included, but the end one is actually cut off and not included, right? And so the reason why I'm explaining this is because this is kind of what we're going to have to do with the filter in the data that we're filtering, right? So I want to show you really quick what this is going to look like. So I'm just going to throw it in a console log. Okay, and so what I want you to do is kind of just experiment with this and get to know a little bit how slice works, right? So if this works properly, then our start point is 1, so it should be Anthony, and then 5 is name, so it should be other. So it should be Anthony, Costa, Brian, other. So let's see if that works. Go ahead and hit refresh. Okay, and then you'll see right here, if you pull this out, Anthony, Acosta, Brian, other, and it didn't have the name. Okay, so just kind of experiment with that, make sure you get to know it. You can also just specify one value, and what the one value will do is just grab that index. So in my case, Brian is the third index, so it will cut off everything before that and keep the rest, right? So if you go back, hit refresh, you'll see right here, David, other, name, right? So it just cut everything up until that index, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and move on, and I'll show you how you can apply this in the filter. So here in the filter, type in return function data start. Okay, and so basically what this means is that here in the filter, we're going to pass in parameters, and then it's going to take the data, which is the users, the ng repeat, the user data, and then the start of where we want to slice it, right? So it's going to like this, return data.slice. And then we don't have to put a number here because we're going to get it from the filter, right? Okay, and then before I want to show you this, I just want to comment this out. Actually, I can just delete it. You're not going to need it. But I'm going to show you what happens now. So go back to your filter, and now you can apply something to this. So we'll say 1. Okay, then I want to show you what it does. Okay, so if you hit refresh, you'll notice, and I'm going to put this side by side to my data. You see here are the users that I have being returned, right? This first one is being cut off, right? Because it's being sliced. And you'll notice if you change this to say 2 and then hit refresh, it cuts off the second one as well, right? So we don't want that set to a number like that because it's going to cut off whatever number we put there. That's what it's going to slice it by, right? And actually, I just noticed users is actually going to be user data, right? Because if we set it to users, it's obviously going to be 1 because it's going off of this variable right here. So we actually want user data. So go ahead and test that and make sure that you get your all the pages here that apply, right? So what we need to do is figure out a way to apply this filter without actually deleting anything from here, right? So what we can do is we can say, well, we can say 0. And so setting this to 0 makes sure that no names get cut off here, but what happens is the pagination doesn't work. And the reason for that is because we're not using this ng model of the current page, right? And so what we need to do is multiply this by the current page to ensure that it updates according to ng model. However, the only problem with this is that it's always going to be 0. So we have to find a way to multiply this by 0 without it staying 0, if that makes any sense, right? We can say current page minus 1 times page size, right? And so what you'll have to do is put this in parentheses so that it gets performed before the multiplication. Okay, and so the way this works is current page is always set to 1, right? We set that in our controller. So it's going to be 0 every time when it first loads. However, it's not going to stay 0 because once it's times the page size, right, the items per page, then it's going to change every time, right? If you hit refresh, you'll see here now, you can go next, next, and go back, right? So it doesn't stay at 0 because we set it to this minus 1. So it starts off as 0, but then it'll update, okay? And so just test it out and make sure that all your data is there, compare it to whatever you have, and make sure nothing's getting cut out. All right, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll try to help you out. Take care.